Welcome to this episode of Her Rebirth. I'm Angela Peabody, your host. In this conversation, you will hear from a Massachusetts woman who has done wonders in West Africa. It is my pleasure to welcome Susan McLucas to Her Rebirth. Susan, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's so wonderful to be here.
Great. Well, it seems like you're wearing so many hats. Let's start by telling us about the hat you wear as the bike riding teacher. I want to hear about that.
Well, I teach people how to ride bikes, and I've probably taught about 7,000 people so far. I have a school. I have 5 other teachers, and we've been running for about 40 years. It's really fun. I teach a lot of kids and a lot of grown-ups too. And very many of my grown-ups are from other countries, and most of them are women.
Really?
A lot of places, women aren't expected to ride, and so people don't grow up learning how to do that, and they always feel like $1,000,000 when they do learn.
Yes, because I'm originally from West Africa, a country in West Africa, and bike riding, really, I never owned a bike. My brothers did, but I never did because my sisters and I guess, were not expected to ride bikes.
That's the story, yep.
Yeah, so it's amazing what you're doing with that, and I'm glad to hear that a lot of women are your students, which is great.
Yep. It's a lot of fun.
So let's hear about the other hat you wear as a humanitarian, because that is huge.
Right. Well, I went to Mali in 1997 because I was worried about the problem of female genital mutilation. And before too long, we founded an organization, some of my partners over there and I, to see what we could do. The first thing I did before we had an organization, I was volunteering at one of the long-term anti-FGM organizations over there, the Center Joliba. And while I was there, well, actually shortly after I was there, but in any case, as pretty much a private individual, I put out an album called Stop Excision. And there are 8 songs in 5 local languages of big stars saying, "Don't cut your daughters." And they still play that on the radio. And we made some of those songs and a couple of others into music videos that we still play on the TV over there. So that's been good. But the big, while we were just finishing the album, I had a couple of people asking me how they could help. I forget, I put out a poster while I was with the Center Joliba. And while I was putting the poster up at different health centers, I met a couple of women who kept calling me, "What can I do to help you besides give out posters and have other people put up posters?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Let's get together and decide." And we got together, the 2 nurses from different health centers and me, and we decided, let's have a pledge against excision. So any parent or any person who just promises never to have a daughter cut will sign, will get their contact information and ask them if they think it's time for a law. And almost everybody said yes. So we've handed in these signatures to the legislature twice. And so we needed an organization to do this, and we fumbled around, and my main partner, Shaka Traore, and one of the other people who've been working with us founded this thing called Sini Sanuma, which means healthy tomorrow in the local language of Bambara. So we now have 85,000 signatures, and they've convinced, we just got up to 180 excisers to stop doing cutting girls. And we have 22 villages that have agreed to stop, and we've put their ceremonies on TV, most of them. And so, yeah, we're still going. I talk to them every week. And we have a new building now, the House of Hope, that some Hungarians helped to build us, a group called Close to Africa. And so we're just seeing what we can do. A lot of radio and big public meetings. Yeah.
So you just told me how, because I was going to ask you about Sine Sunamen. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it
Sini
correctly.
Sanuma.
Yes. And you told me the meaning of it. So
Yeah, we had already created a little group in this country that we called Healthy Tomorrow, and Shaka and his friends were happy to have the same name in Bambara, because we're sort of like sister organizations.
So I want to come back to, you mentioned the house, and I want to come back to that later on. But tell me what Healthy Tomorrow's main project is.
Well, our main thing is to support Sini Sanuma. And we do that by raising money to send to them. And also, sometimes we help them with artistic projects. Like we've had billboards up. We've had 2 designs so far, and we were thinking that it was getting a little bit stale. People had seen the same billboard for, I don't know, 8 or 10 years. And we, especially with the new law, we said, okay, we need a new image for people to see. So we helped create the poster that announces the law. I guess I haven't talked about the law yet.
Yes, we haven't gotten to that yet, but go ahead.
So we gave the signatures to the legislature 2 times. No response, and then there was a coup, and who knows if our signatures helped get a law, but almost all the countries that practice FGM have laws by now. And last December, Mali finally voted in a law, sort of. Well, it is a law, but they didn't want to talk about FGM. So they just made a law against sexual violence, and there is a document that the women's ministry put out saying that FGM is sexual violence. So it's kind of a roundabout way to outlaw it. But we talked to the women's ministry as we were designing our poster to publicize the law. And on the poster, we have the link to the law itself and to the document that proves that FGM is sexual violence. I made little tiny URLs for them so you can put them on a poster. And so we've been trying to publicize that. And we put out 2,000 posters so far. And we've had, I don't know, 6 or something shows on the radio that have, each one has been broadcast a few times. So we're trying to get the word out. The government hasn't been too active in publicizing this law. In fact, it took a few months before we even knew it had happened. And so that was that was strange. They sort of wanted to. Hopefully, they'll really be applying it, but it does make you a little bit nervous, the fact that they're not really shouting from the rooftops by any means.
And it's worthy of being shouted from the rooftops, because you and I both know, and I'm sure people in our audience know, how long it has taken for the Republic of Mali to pass a law against FGM. For many years, Mali,
Yep.
Liberia, and Sierra Leone have been the three lone countries on the continent of Africa that had no laws against FGM. So you would think
Yep.
that after passing it, it should be publicized greatly. There should be the news, it should be all plastered all over the newspapers. So I'm surprised that they are not. And I understand why you would feel uneasy about that. And that's the thing about laws and policy making. People, we advocates fight to get laws passed. And then the laws are passed and they sit on the books, and it's there. Just knowing that it's there is good to know. But how well are they implemented? How or
Yeah,
enforced?
that's the main thing.
Yes, and
Exactly.
that's something we have to look at. And I'll give you the example right here in Virginia, in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We fought to have a special educational law passed against for FGM to be mandated, that it's taught to all public high schools and middle schools. And to date, and this was passed in 2019, and here we are in 2025, and there's only one school district, the city of Alexandria in Virginia, that implements the law and enforces it. No other school district does that. So just
Wow,
that's just an example. This is the United States. So
yeah.
imagine over in West Africa, all the countries in West Africa, except for to date, except for Liberia and Sierra Leone, do have laws on the books against FGM, criminalizing it. However, how many are really enforcing those laws? Is the question, because as you and I both know, FGM is still running rampant on the continent of Africa. So
Is, although it's a lot less than it used to be.
yes, it's much less, but it's still the fact that it still does exist there. But I
Yeah, it's
want us to
terrible.
go back to what you mentioned about the House. And we will come back to the law, because I want us to talk about how you convinced those 180 excisers to stop. But I wanted to hear more about this house that was built.
So there was a woman who, Andrea Morris, who has a nonprofit in Mali, who was visiting her, and it helped kids go to school. And she was driving around Bamako and saw our billboard of a mother protecting her daughter from FGM, saying, "I love her, so I'm protecting her." And said, "Oh, yeah, I've heard about that." They went and they met Shaka in our office in Bamako, and she got all excited about what we were doing. And she said she heard that we had a piece of land and that someone had given us. We don't usually, somebody just had a little extra land and seen our posters, heard us on the radio, said, "I like what you're doing, here's this land." I was afraid I was going to die before anything ever happened with the land. But she said to herself, my government, the Hungarian government, likes to do its international aid in the form of building things. Maybe they'll build us a big office for you guys with a safe house, with a medical office, with a training center. And they did. And so we now are training, like, I don't know, 15 or so young women who are victims of sexual violence to sew. And the plan is to expand it into soap making. And we have a doctor that comes in every week, and we treat women and young girls who are having problems with their FGM. And we are set up to give refuge to girls fleeing FGM or women fleeing an arranged marriage. And with the unrest in Mali and various reasons, we haven't, we don't have any people yet in our safe house, but we will. And so it's, our operation is on a bigger scale than it used to be. And we're really pleased about it.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. And that the Hungarian government did this.
Yeah.
Yes, to build this safe house. I wish so many other places, even right here in the US, had safe houses specifically for victims and survivors of FGM. That would be great.
Yep.
Yes, and I also wanted to compliment you on the billboards and posters. Do you know how many years I've been dreaming about putting up billboards throughout the US or on the highways with anti-FGM messages on them. It works. This shows that it works because it worked in Mali. So, and radio announcements, maybe because my background is broadcasting, perhaps I'm kind of partial to that idea, but radio announcements, because you mentioned something about somebody from Hungary saw the posters. So that led to building, all of that led to building this safe house.
Yep.
So I think the public announcements, billboards, posters, flyers, passing flyers around, those things really work. If anybody is wondering, it really works. So congratulations. I commend you on that idea of doing that.
Thank you so much.
So now let's talk about first of all, I want to know, and I'm sure the audience is wondering too, how did a woman from Massachusetts in the US, a New England state, connect with the Republic of Mali all the way in West Africa? Just tell me a little bit about that.
One of the pioneers in the FGM movement in this country was Fran Hoskin, and I knew her, and I was asking her where I should go. No, that's not quite right, because she told me, everybody told me not to go. But there was a map that actually she put out that showed that Mali had the worst kind of FGM, infibulation, where they actually sew up the vulva.
Yes.
Tiny little hole. So crazy. And I thought, well, I might as well, if I want to work on this issue, I might as well go to the place where it's the worst. And so I said, well, I don't know Somali, I don't know Amharic, they do it in Ethiopia. But I do know French. So I said, oh, Mali is going to be my place. The first day that I was in Mali, I discovered they didn't do the worst kind, except, well, 1% or so, which is bad enough. That means still a lot of girls and women in Mali are infibulated. And sometimes it happens by accident. But in any case, I said, well, I'm here and it's bad enough, just regular old FGM. So I stayed there. But Fran Hoskin was the one who gave me the name and contact information for the Center Joliba, which was my first place where I volunteered. And so, and I had a friend who, one of my housemates, I think, had been to Mali and knew some people there, and so I got a host family, a Malian family that had a telephone, so they were able to talk to me and invite me to stay with them. So, and it's actually Kaniba, our best volunteer now, is one of the sisters from my host family. She has convinced 50 excisers herself to stop, and she's made friends with most of them. Sometimes they call her up and say, "Oh, we haven't been in touch in a long time." She says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I've been so busy, but how are you doing?" She's so sweet. So it's the way that I, of course, I don't speak Bambara. I speak French, so I'm able to talk to the educated people in Mali, but I can't really talk to maybe about 60% of the women. And most of the excisers tend to be less educated. And so I haven't ever convinced an exciser myself. Although there was one time Kaniba was having her fourth meeting with Maimuna Kante, who stayed involved in our movement 20 years later. And the time that I was with them, they were speaking in French, but I sang my song. No, they were speaking in Bambara, of course. And I really couldn't tell what they were saying, but Kaniba invited me to sing my song in Bambara, which is Leave Her Alone. That was the day that she decided to stop. So who knows if I had a slight role in convincing her to stop. But Kaniba just, and you know, all the people we have, I don't know, a couple dozen people, I think, who have convinced an exciser or more. They just blame the consequences, the pain that it causes. Well, the excisers must know that because they're there. They see the woman, the girl screaming bloody murder. But the long-term consequences they're not aware of, you know, how much harder it is to have a baby and all the infections, and you can get tetanus, you can get AIDS, just many, many problems and lifelong pain while you're having sex, but even when you're not having sex.
Not to mention the psychological pain.
Exactly. Just, you know, the trauma, nightmares, and so she's very, you know, all of our people are very respectful, you know, listening to their ideas and saying, well, you know, there are other things you can do to make a living. And we often help excisers who stop with a little stipend to start a new line of work, but not always. Sometimes they just find, and it's amazing how it's kind of a taboo subject. And so a lot of people haven't really heard about it. We have this summary that we use as a handout, and it just lists all the reasons not to excise. And I've seen people read it and they say, oh, I never knew all this. Well, I'll certainly not have my daughter excised if I ever have a daughter. And, you know, it's just simple information, but if no one's talking about it, then people stay with their idea. You know, my mother told me it was important to do, and I've gone through it and I survived. And a lot of people take that as sort of a point of pride. And it's good in a way that they feel that way because at least they get something out of it. But then in those cases, it can make them think, well, this is good for my daughter too. But then a lot of people, maybe more people, I'm not quite sure, say, oh my God, that was such a trauma to go through that. I would never do that to my daughter. And a lot of people, you know, their relationship with their mother is ruined when that happens.
Yeah.
But most people's love for their mother is so much, they say, well, there must be a reason, or I don't know. It's all different in different people. But It usually takes a couple of visits to convince a woman to stop. And this last, oh my goodness, I've never seen something with, oh, there was one time when Texas stopped at a big meeting that our president Shaka ran a few years back. But Kaniba was at a big celebration of Radio Africa just a few days ago. And the organizer of this festival celebrating their, I don't know, 29th year or whatever it was, have a big festival. They invited Kaniba to talk, and she said, I want you to get all the excisers you can to come. And there were 8 excisers there, which is unusual. Usually there's, 1 or 2 if there are any, because a lot of excisers would kind of avoid this sort of a meeting. But out of the 8 excisers who were there, 6 of them promised her that they wouldn't do it anymore after having heard what she said. 2 of them said they have to think about it. They plan to keep going, but she's got their names and knows how to get them. So I'm sure a couple more conversations with her and they'll be stopping too. We have this nice little certificate of honor that we give excisers who stop, saying we thank you. You have the blessing of the women and girls of Mali, and thank you for putting the interests of others at the same level as your own interests. And a lot of them really love this thing. It's on stiff paper and it has a little border. And one of them said, this is just like a diploma. She was putting it on her wall.
I love that. I love that idea. Everything that you've been saying, Susan, I just love it. It's and that's so good. Oh yes, you mentioned your song. When you mentioned your song earlier, about how the song did something, it made a difference. And I wanted to say,
possibly.
yes, that proves that music is the universal language, because you mentioned that you couldn't communicate with some of those women who were uneducated. And I could very much relate to that, to when you said that. It stuck in my mind, because the same thing with Liberia, and that's what people don't realize in the United States. Perhaps in Europe they do realize it, but in the United States, a lot of people don't realize that you could be from the same country, but you will not be able to understand.
Yeah.
When somebody from the north and you're from the south might not be able to communicate. Whereas in the United States, everybody who speaks English, whether you even went to school or not, whether you educated or not, you'll be able to communicate, but not in those countries in Africa. With Mali, in the case of Mali, it's French. And I was at an event once speaking, and there was my colleague who serves on our board, and she's from Switzerland. So she speaks Swiss French.
A little different.
And we had the Guineans there, who are the official language of Guinea is French. And I asked her if she could understand what they were saying, and she said no, she couldn't understand it, even though they were speaking French, but they were speaking a colloquial kind of French.
Right, a little different.
Yes, and that took me to back to Liberia, where I cannot understand probably almost half of the population in Liberia, because they speak a different kind of English, or a colloquial kind of English, or they speak a different language, dialect.
Altogether, yeah.
Yeah, so that makes it even more difficult to be able to communicate in those parts compared to here in the US. So some of the things we take for granted, but music, I think music can, when you use music, it it transcends, and it helps people to connect. It's a connectivity there with music.
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
you're on the right track. You really got some good um, advice there for people from other countries. Let's go back to convincing 180 excisers to stop, because I know how difficult it is, and you did it. And some of those excisers, I'm thinking, could become advocates in their own right.
They are. They tell people I'm not doing it anymore, and they tell them why. And sometimes if they get too many arguments, they call up Kaniba or someone else and say, "Can you help me convince these people? They're not listening to me." So amazing.
What about the 50 different languages that you you know how to greet people in? Where Tell me about where some of those languages come from.
Well, of course, I know how to greet people in Bambara and some other African languages. You know, Inisogoma, Ikakane, good morning, how are you doing in Bambara? And then in Senegal, they say, oh, Nangadef, and the answer is Mangfarik. And I know lots of Indian languages, and it's really fun to greet someone in their own language, and they're so surprised. Especially, I learned Twi it's one of the languages in Ghana, from a taxi
Yes,
cab driver. And you don't
I
get,
know Twi. I
oh,
mean, I've heard of it. Yes.
you don't get much call for that, but I've had a couple of times when I asked someone what their local language was, and they said Twi, and I said, greeted them. Atase, I think, I'm not sure. It's escaping me right now, but they were so amazed. It's such a fun thing
It
to
is.
say,
It's got to
you know.
be. Yes.
I can't really say much else, but at least I know your language exists. I know where it comes from, and it's really fun.
Wow, Susan McLucas, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today and contributing to our podcast. And again, that's why we're doing this podcast, because we want people educated and to get knowledge about FGM, and that it is still happening today. Too many people in the world believe
Yep.
that it doesn't exist anymore. It's been stopped. But no,
Not
we
really.
won't. Yes, we need people to know. And you have done such an exemplary work, not only in Mali, that I think, I don't know if you've ever thought about putting together all of the work that you've done, compiling it into something to set an example, or for it to be a blueprint for other countries such as Liberia. I know I would welcome your advice on what to do to get the Liberian people to pass the law in Liberia and also in Sierra Leone. So that's something for you to chew on.
If I had to summarize, I would say if you can get the big, influential, well-known people to speak out or sing out, as we did in our album, that goes a long way.
Great. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Angela. This has been such a pleasure.
Thanks. And if you enjoyed this episode, please look forward to the next episode. Please tune in and join us for our next episode. Thank you very much for listening. And if you want to get more information, please go to our website at www.gwpfnd.org. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.